Welcome back, everybody, to another thrilling episode of Thrive Street Program with Coach 2J. This is your host, Jeremy Jones. We're talking about week 26, Tuesday, June 25th. So we want people to push yourself on the load you choose today. This is a competition context, and it's one that I kind of use, I do use as a benchmark. And so, I want people to be familiar with it. It's kind of a version of the bear complex, but with, just sort of that. That was the original, I should say that was just the inspiration, but I added burpees because I wanted to kind of make it easier for people who weren't as physically large, right? So they all use this instead of changing the load for different people, we would do we're going to do the same load obviously when they work up to whatever load, but then it's a little bit more balanced because we added the burpees. But so again, depending on where someone's at, they may try to do a load that they, at least for the first round, that they might not normally pick, because we do have 2 minutes rest and they can change the plates easily enough. And so I want people to challenge themselves on a day like today. It's competition context, so we want to see a little bit more push. And so again, if now somebody can do 75 easily, then maybe they should try the 85, or if they've done 115 pretty well, and maybe they were on the lower side of the scaling guide, then they can do, then they should try for the heavier bar. So you remember to tell people that competition days are days where we can kind of push ourselves a little bit harder, and they only show up about 3 out of 10 of the workouts, and so for about every 10, for every 10 workouts you do, 6 of them are practice, 3 of them are competition, and 1's mental toughness. And so that way we know that people aren't overdoing it with trying to go too hard, and today's the day we want people to push themselves. So then we've got our warm-up, some shoulder activation, and then we're going to spend 10 minutes working on challenging overhead squat out of the rack. It's going to be a set of 3, so again, we can have people pair up or whatever. If you want to do it, like, you can have them do every 2 minutes. They can do it. They could try to do it every minute, but every 2 minutes is good, because then 2 or even 3 people can share the rack, right? And then as it gets heavy, it's always good to, instead of lowering it onto the back, to go ahead and drop it to the floor, and then team lift it back into the rack. But we're just kind of seeing where people are at with their overhead squats, right? And this is going to help you determine what loads people should be using in the metcon, because we'll see kind of where people are at. It's going to warm them up. It's kind of fun to test. People like to know kind of what their overhead squat is, but instead of doing it as the lift, which I don't do very often, because it tends to be more of a test of flexibility and range of motion of their joints, but also some coordination. And when I do the strength stuff, I'm doing it for strength. We're either building strength or power, and the overhead squat doesn't build that much strength or power. It's a great movement, but I'd rather do the other squat variations, and then we just practice overhead squats, and we do overhead squats and some metcons. So then we got Kodiak. So obviously it's the Kodiak bear, but is where the name came from. We're going to do 10 hang power snatches, 15 overhead squats, and then 20 clean and jerks, and then 20 burpees, 2 minutes rest, and then we just do one more round of that. So I want people to be a little bit more, take their time on these hang power snatches and these overhead squats, and then the clean and jerks and the burpees are where they can really push themselves. And again, people will be limited on their loads that they can use, probably because of the hang power snatches and the overhead squats. So that's why the reps are so high on the clean and jerks, and we just want people to really kind of be able to whip these out fast, right? We want people to push the intensity, obviously still with good form. Just make sure when people are doing the hang power snatches that they're actually finishing it overhead, that their overhead squats are legit. You'll notice that the health is the front squat, so again, they can use a little bit more weight. Because if they're not having to over squat, they can just front squat it, and then these are power clean and jerks. So most people who can front squat that for 15, even broken up, should be able to clean and jerk it. As usual in the burpees, just make sure people are not hyperextending their backs. Where we tend to see this dropped back position and we see this really bad hyperextension, and then they jump up and they're rounding their backs way over when they stand up. And so that going between that hyper extended to hyper flex position is not good for the back, right? So we're only doing 40 burpees total, so people may not notice it, but over time, over many workouts, this technique can really be hard on the spine, and then especially when you combine it with other movements is when we see it. So what we want people to do is tighten their abs up so that they get more of a straight body onto their knees, right? So between their knees, their hips, and their shoulders, that's a straight line. So they keep their abs engaged. They can still push up off their knees and then pop up. And then when they pop up, we don't want to see a big rounded back. We want them to land with a fairly flat back, right? We don't want to see that flexed position. But that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot, and thrive on.